turn that lamp on. Oh, great.
Wow, that's bright.
Good. Let there be light, and there was. That was God.
All right, just hold the curtain. So we have to get rid of the cord.
Chuck it in the. Here, Devil, in the garbage there.
You're not allowed to put those.
Oh, bloody, nobody listens to anything I say.
All right.
Oh, I'm gonna fire everybody.
Even Gabriel?
Okay.
Yep, we're set up.
What are you talking about?
I shared the link to the stream with your Facebook friends. So some people are going to come check it.
People are getting rough.
I shared the stream so people can see it.
Yes.
Yes. Let's do this. All right. And then we'll just put this over top. All right.
Jesus.
What?
Oh.
What are you saying Jesus about?
Okay, carry on. And what do you want to know? What's that?
It's a picture of you.
Eh?
It's a picture of you.
Picture of me?
Yeah, with a car. Whose car is that?
I think it's, I'm glad you're asking now before it's a blue Dodge.
The blue Dodge.
And I think it's my car.
It's your car? How long ago did you have that car?
Well, I drove it to the ground. And,
You did?
And I had to be towed into Toyota in Lansing and towed in, and I think somebody brought me back, or they loaned me a car, one of the two, and yeah, so that's the story. What else do you want to know?
Well, who had a car in the village?
Who had a car in the village?
Yes.
Nobody in the village had a car. The only person who had a telephone was Mr. Jones, the cop. That means Mr. Jones, the policeman. And he lived in 1 Bibby Road. And if we needed Dr. Hill, and then Dr. Hill, our house was like an emergency room. And if you wanted Dr. Hill, you had to, my father, Dad, had to go to Mr. Jones, the policeman, and tell him to call Dr. Hill. Dr. Hill used to stop at down below our house because he couldn't get up there in his, because the roadways or the roadways were too narrow. So he had to get out of his car and walk up with his little black bag, which was always short on supplies. So in 1939, we didn't have a pandemic, but we did have an epidemic. And the epidemic supposedly was caused by a soldier coming in across the water from Germany with the Diplococcus, and he infected all of us. Well, not all of us. It's interesting because there are 2 redheads in my family. Olive Holland Roberts and William Leonard Roberts. And Olive has changed her name, and they both had red hair. And Olive has changed her name to Olivia. But they didn't get diphtheria. I asked Olive to breathe down my throat so that I could get diphtheria and go to the hospital because I'd never been to a hospital.
Hey, Audrey.
And I thought it'd be exciting, but I almost died when I got there. Turn those lights off in the kitchen, Deborah.
Audrey.
You're wasting electricity. Not those! Not that one! The one above. Good, thank you.
Wait, Audrey,
So
we told this story.
it doesn't matter where I stop with my stories. I can pick up.
Yeah.
Did you ever go in Dr. Hill's car?
No, I didn't go.
What was the first car that you were a passenger in?
Maybe in London. I have my RN degree from Birmingham. I went to Birmingham General from 1950 to 1954, and I got my RN and hospital certification, and I became a member of the Royal College of Nurses. And I went to London, not to see the Queen, but I went to London to work at St. Mary's Hospital. And I had a friend who went through nursing school with me. Her name was Margaret Thomas. She came from a village called Carenion in mid Wales. So I used to tell Margaret, come on, Margaret, come with me. So she did everything I told her. So we went to London. We got a job at St. Mary's. I didn't like it, so I switched to the private wing. She didn't like it, so she went to the women's hospital. She didn't like that either, but and she left there. I don't know if she was a patient, but she signed herself out.
Well, the question: when you were working in London in private care, there was one of the patients had a Rolls Royce.
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Mind your own business.
All right.
I'm telling the story.
All right.
Now you've
Ruined it. Okay.
mucked it up.
We'll have to edit out my presence.
So I worked at St. Mary's Hospital in the private unit, and one of my patients was a man with see, you messed it up.
Oh.
Anyway, his name was Sidney Cumbers. He'd had a stroke.
Wait, Audrey.
And I was his nurse. And his father, I'm told, this was in 1955, in the days of newspapers. And I'm told that he was the son of the man who owned the Ink in London. So he was a wealthy man, this Sidney Cumbers. and he lived in a flat across from Hyde Park, and I was his private duty nurse. So I went to that apartment in Lancaster Gate, and there was a doorman. His name was Verger. So Verger opened the door for me, because I think this apartment, this flat unit was locked, and I think Verger had to open the door. So Verger opened the door for me, and I used to go up there, and I think it was on the second floor and across from Hyde Park. And I would take this fellow across the road in a wheelchair to Hyde Park, and there was a cafe there, and we'd have tea, and it was nice. We'd have sandwiches, scones, tea, nice. And he had a weekend residence, and it was called The Lookout, and it was in Gravesend, Kent, near Tilbury Docks. And you could see the big liners coming in to Tilbury Docks, which were the main docks for the UK. And so the house that they had in Gravesend was called The Lookout. And they had a servant, a manservant called Henry. And they also had, this man, Sidney Cumbers, had the largest collection of ship's figureheads, next to some in the world. But there was another man in the US who also had a collection. I'll try to remember to come back to them. I remember this man in the US was married to a woman who had emphysema. Margaret Thomas and I were sitting on a sofa. They lived in Rittenhouse Square in downtown Philadelphia. And Rittenhouse Square was the place very wealthy people lived. And Margaret Thomas and I went to Rittenhouse Square, met this woman up there with the emphysema, and I have a photograph of us taken there. And I think they entertained us to dinner, and it was lavish. I can't remember what it was, but it was lavish. So Cumbers had a residence in Gravesend, Kent, and next door to the house was a tiny graveyard, and in that graveyard was Pocahontas's grave. Pocahontas was married to somebody, John Smith or somebody, and he married her, and she came across to Tilbury, and she died, obviously, and her grave is in there. And Darrell asked me, when did I first ride in a car?
Mhm.
Well, I dropped out of school when I was 14, and Mr. Humphreys, my schoolmaster, begged me not to do that. But I dropped out, and I think I felt the urge to contribute to the coffers at home, 17 side. And my mother, Sarah Grace May Williams, or Roberts, Nee Williams, um, where she lamented her reduced circumstances. And when you think about the circumstances she was reduced from, they were quite a contrast to 17 side. She was the daughter of the Reverend John Williams, BA, and he was my grandfather. And I have pictures of him as well. And ideally, I should be giving them to Carol, and she should be putting them on. But I'm not into that right now.
We can find them later.
Eh?
We can look for them after the stream.
I can.
I can help you find those photos.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
But we'll do them in a minute.
Yeah.
What was Darrell's question? When did I first ride in a car?
He wanted you to tell the subscribers.
Well, I worked in a youth hostel, and Nan Kenner had an old Ford car.
Mhm.
So I rode in her car. That was the first car I got into. And she drove, she was the one who ran the youth hostel. And there was, what was his name? Who he became the ambassador to France.
Hmm.
David, what was his last name? Blimey. David Mitchell.
Hmm.
David Mitchell. So, and there was another fellow, what was his name? I'll think about it. Anyway, during the war, Second World War, London government decided to send all the civil servants to North Wales. And they were housed in Colwyn Bay, Llandudno, they took over all the lovely hotels. And Colwyn Bay, Llandudno, Old Colwyn, all of them taken over. And all the records.
Hey, Audrey, I'll be right back, okay?
Where are you going?
I have to use the bathroom.
Okay.
All right, you keep telling the story.
Okay. So, let me think. So, what's that? Oh, that's Gladys Cordelia Maud and her husband. My mother came from a family, and her father was the Reverend John Williams. There were 8 children in that family, 5 boys and 3 girls. Robert Gainsford Wynne Williams was number 1. Graham Williams, Cedric Williams, Charles Williams, and there was another, Cadwallader. So I got the 5 boys, and there were 3 girls, Harriet, Theodora, Mary, Harriet, Theodora, Mary, Gladys, Cordelia, Maud, and my mother, Sarah Grace May, and they all had the last name Williams. So my mother, in the vicarage where they lived, next to the church, they had servants. They had cooks, maids, waitress, tutor. They had everybody, gardener. So when she got pregnant out of wedlock and had Edna May Williams, the father, it said, was Canadian soldier. And well, of course, that's all they did, those marauding military people, go around impregnating women. Anyway, there was, so Mama had to have a job in order, they expected Edna to be adopted. Well, my mother wouldn't give her up. So she had to have a job to keep her. So her family knew the managers of the aluminum works in Dalgarrett, where they rolled out ingots of aluminum, and we used to call it aluminium. So it was called the Aluminium Works, a big factory where they rolled out the ingots. And my sister Phyllis, and the floor was concrete, and my sister Phyllis worked there because Phyllis also had a baby out of wedlock, and her name was Alma Roberts, but she had another name, and I've got to think about it. We used to call her Almino, and I was her caregiver, her babysitter. And there was a big, Alma was beautiful. She had red hair, blue eyes, and somebody in the village knitted her a nice little dress in white on the top and green on the bottom. And I think it had a nice white ribbon in the middle. So people used to come to see Alma in her big Victorian pram, or whatever it was called. It was posh, in her pram. Next door to, what's that, the phone?
Hello?
It's a beautiful sunny day here. It's March. What's the temperature, Carol?
Oh, let me check. I'm not sure. It's very sunny. Probably about 60?
50?
60 maybe. Let me see.
Well, just give me a rough idea.
Oh, you were dead on. It was 50 degrees.
50?
Mm-hmm. But it was 70 yesterday.
Yesterday in Michigan, it was 70 degrees, and it's only March.
Mm-hmm.
March what?
March 12th.
Yesterday.
11th was the yesterday.
Yeah. So yesterday on the 11th of March, it was 60 degrees, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So really warm.
Mhm.
And today is 50. 50. Still warm.
Mhm.
So where was I? So these people can have a live chat with me, is that right?
Yeah, no one's asked a
But
question.
nobody wants to ask any questions.
Not today. They're just
No.
listening.
So what day is it today? Friday.
If it's Friday.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're all sleeping.
Maybe they slept in a
Oh.
little too late.
Eh?
Maybe they partied too hard Thursday night and they're sleeping.
They're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So it's very nice. So I think I'll stop.
Okay.
Okay, go
All right.
on, stop.
And the recording will go up, and then some of your friends will watch it later, too.
What?
Your friends will watch this later, too.
Say it again.
So they can watch right now,
Yeah.
and they can chat with you, right?
Okay.
Or they can watch it later, like a video.
Whatever.
Okay.
So what are we doing? Carry on. You
Yep.
do that.
Yep, I'm stopping that.
And, oh. Have you got a pen? So or a pen?
There's a pencil.